This video was sponsored by Morning Brew. Hey, happy Friday. It's IFA time, so we're going to talk about all the exciting new gadgets that were just announced. Nvidia and AMD had some of their shipments to China and Russia blocked by the US government, and the EU announced some of the most mind-boggling tech legislation ever. Welcome to the Friday Checkout. Okay, we start the brief with the most exciting announcements from IFA this week. To begin with, Sony launched the Xperia 5 Mark IV. It's a $999 small-ish flagship phone that somehow still has a 5000 mAh battery and a headphone jack, though sadly no fancy variable telephoto lens and no bump up to the newer Snapdragon 8 Plus Gen 1 either. Then Lenovo released a new pair of glasses, and while I usually instinctively dismiss these, I kind of like the simplicity here. Instead of trying to do AR and tracking and whatever, these simply plug into any device with a USB-C display out port, and they act as a simple monitor on your face, including for Windows, Mac, or even Samsung DeX, and the quality is surprisingly nice. Text on this thing looks kind of crisp for once, and the price should be sub $500 as well, so if they looked a little bit less dorky, I could actually start seeing these become useful soon. And finally, with the releases this week, Leica also announced the Cine One, its first ever home projector that outputs a 4K image for 6,900 euros. Damn! It's made in cooperation with Hisense, a Chinese brand, which really seems to be Leica's favorite way to do anything these days. Now, outside of IFA, AMD further announced the first 4 Ryzen 7000 CPUs, and they look really promising, especially given that each model seems to cost $50 to $100 less than its predecessor. Then Twitter said that they are now testing an edit button as part of their paid Twitter Blue subscription that lets you edit a tweet for 30 minutes with a little flag to show you that you did it. Finally, the French government decided to use AI to figure out who illegally had a pool, which helped them find 20,000 units for 10 million euros in tax revenue. And finally, some AI-generated artwork actually won the Colorado State Fair Fine Arts competition. A guy called Jason Allen used the AI program Midjourney to create images, then upscaled those to high resolution, printed them on canvas, submitted them, and won. Spooky, but somehow also amazing. Okay, that's it for this brief, and for my first actual story, we're going to be returning to IFA and talking about foldable laptops, which I tried, and I'm actually surprisingly quite excited about these. And before any smart-ass comments that actually laptops were already foldable in the first place, just let it go. You know what I'm talking about. Okay, so first there is the ThinkPad X1 Fold, which is Lenovo's second attempt at this category, and the other one is the ZenBook 17 Fold OLED, which is ASUS's first try. And the two devices are surprisingly similar, though Lenovo seems just a little bit more refined. Gone are the chunky bezels from the first generation that made them ugly. Instead we get nice thin ones on both, and in response to feedback, the foldable laptops are now also much bigger. The Lenovo one is 16 inches, up from the 13 inches last time, while the Asus one is 17 inches, and both of these fold down to the size of about a 12-inch laptop. This huge size actually makes the whole folding mechanism finally worth it, since it enables you to carry around a huge, super nice OLED display with you, and the big size also allows the keyboard on both of these devices to be full size now, so typing on both actually felt just normal. Also gone from the first generation are the weird hinges that just look normal now, and the crease on both of these devices was actually barely visible as well. I'm filming at an exaggerated angle, but from the front you can basically not see them at all. The ThinkPad actually comes with a pen now too, while the Asus one doesn't, but both devices also have regular U-series Intel chips and regular laptop-sized batteries now too, so there isn't a real performance compromise compared to an Ultrabook anymore either. In other words, the leap from the first generation to the second one is pretty huge. I could never have imagined myself using a first generation X1 Fold, but seeing these new devices in flesh and trying them out myself, I kind of instinctively wanted one. The prices are ridiculously high for both, which I guess is kind of unavoidable for new tech, and inexplicably the Asus also costs more despite being generally worse. And of course durability has to get better too, with Asus for example saying that their machine will last 30,000 folds, which they said was about 5 years. That is not enough for a PC. So this generation isn't quite it yet, but seeing that multiple companies are working on pretty much the same kind of concept and seeing how big of a performance and quality quality jump we got from one generation to the other, I'm actually fairly optimistic that we aren't too far off from a usable, kind of practical version of this device. Okay, my second story of the week is going to be the US government limiting and to some extent banning the export of chips from Nvidia and AI to China and Russia. Now, we're not talking about consumer-grade GPUs, but some advanced AI gear, including the AMD MI250 AI chips, as well as the Nvidia A100 Tensor Core GPU, and the upcoming H100 GPU, which is for natural language processing apps, with the quoted reason being that they might be diverted to a military end use. Neither company sells to Russia anyway these days, but both have a pretty sizable China business, with Nvidia, for example, having previously forecast $400 million of total sales to China, so there might be some disruption there as Chinese users import hardware for things like image recognition, machine learning, advanced data processing, and so on top of course, military and aerospace applications as well. China does have some potential competitors of its own, like Biren, the Chinese GPU startup, which emerged out of stealth last week with a seemingly decent-sounding GPU built on TSMC's 7nm process, but their capabilities are very unclear so far. Now, these are not blanket bans, as the companies can actually apply for export licenses, and the US government occasionally gives them. Apparently, Nvidia has already received some, so maybe the GPUs will continue flowing. We don't quite know, but it'll be interesting to see what the impact on the Chinese kind of AI empire will be. Okay, and my third story of the week is going to be the EU putting out what is potentially the most galaxy brain tech regulation for phones and tablets yet. It's just a proposal, but I'm a little bit impressed. First, manufacturers would have to keep at least 15 different components available for repairs for 5 years after any device was introduced, including the display, battery, back covers, cameras, and so on. That alone would be a massive deal for repairability. Second, there would be a minimum quality requirement for batteries, which would have to survive at least 500 full charges without deteriorating to below 83% of their capacity. That is not a particularly high standard, but it would mean that even cheap phones couldn't have like atrociously bad batteries. And third, a standardized label would have to come with every device, just like on home appliances in Europe, that would include figures for battery life, durability, repairability, battery quality, and an IP rating, for example, all based on standardized tests, with the proposal also explaining how each of these values would have to be calculated. I think all three of these ideas sound kind of phenomenal. They might mean that maybe some of the more experimental phones might not come to Europe right away because maybe a manufacturer couldn't be bothered to do all these tests and stock all these components for the risk of maybe only selling 10 devices here or something. But overall, I think these are fantastic ideas, and I really hope that they work. Now, there is a lot more that has happened this week, including, for example, Snapchat laying off 20% of its employees, or more than 1,000 people, but you'll have to read about that and anything else that pops up in the week ahead in my sponsor, Morning Brew, the free daily newsletter that is the best way to stay up to date with everything that is going on in the world of tech, business, and politics. I read Morning Brew Monday to Sunday, usually right after waking up in the morning, as the name suggests, and I find that it is a great way to start the day with some fresh news rather than the dreaded social media doom scroll. They cover similar topics as me here on the channel and in a similar length and format too, meaning that it is nice and snappy, so I think my viewers would really quite enjoy it. Signing up takes like 15 seconds and it is free, so there's no reason not to sign up. Click on the link in the description and you'll be all set.